My name is Michaela Harmeling, and I'm going to be doing my call to action project on the fight against human trafficking. So the issue itself, so people are taken advantage of for another's personal gain on a regular basis. This can be seen in many aspects, but in regards to injustice issues, human trafficking takes this to the extreme. Human trafficking, what does that mean? It's organized criminal activity in which human beings are treated as possessions to be controlled and exploited, as being forced into prostitution or involuntary labor. And an incredible thing is, according to Kevin Bales, finding 27 million people are involved in some form of modern day slavery throughout the world. So, how is this specifically a social and economic justice issue? This qualifies as a social justice issue of interest to social work in particular because it entails an enforced problematic lifestyle that traumatizes and causes harm on a person. This in return makes them feel less as an individual and lacking in value. Economically speaking, human trafficking is a business that involves the entire world. One of the main reasons it still exists and is pursued is because the enormous profits it makes, and those earn a high amount of power because of their economic stand with human trafficking and in the world. The people that escape from this business require assistance to free them mentally from the trauma they received or fear of being trapped again because of the people that are at a higher level with human trafficking, and the bosses basically are so stable with the amount of money they make. They can pull ties, pull strings, and do a lot of damage, and it's really, really dangerous for those trying to escape. So the social worker's plan of action and level of intervention. Social workers can provide and help these individuals in finding ways to overcome these struggles or have an outlet to relieve stress it all brings. Social workers themselves have different roles in different perspectives, such as prevention and intervention. And according to Jennifer Mazie, a professor at a university in Nevada, she gives both of these in definition and an example in the micro, meso, and macro levels. So social workers can, in the micro level, talk to their clients about the warning signs of potential exploitation and how to access help, as well as offer clinical and other supports to those at risk of victimizing others. And at the meso level, social workers can help educate their greater communities of the warning signs of victimizing behavior and victimization and involve themselves in greater community efforts. And at the macro level, social workers can voice the social work perspective to politicians and lawmakers who make choices about funding programs for those most vulnerable to victimization, such as the homeless, immigrants, and unprotected children, and to the victimizing such as disenfranchised groups, those lacking strong supportive family structures, and the financially and educationally undeserved. And at the intervention perspective, on the micro level, social workers can play a role in providing direct support to those victimized through advocacy, psychoeducational, and clinical interventions. And at the meso level, social workers can play a role in providing and educating the community and service providers about the needs of those victimized. And lastly, social workers can help by advocating for infrastructure and funding for interventions and treatment programs. So, position of the professional of social work. So, the primary mission of social work is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic human needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. And this basically is speaking about all the things involved with human trafficking, because they are vulnerable, they are oppressed, and basically forced to live in poverty because they are enslaved. And so a big feat that was made in 2000 for social workers as a whole was the passing of the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act, which according to it, was to combat trafficking in persons, especially into the sex trade, slavery, and involuntary servitude, and to reauthorize certain federal programs to prevent violence against women and for other purposes. So that was a huge deal, and helping to protect those people that were enslaved in that situation and all those dangers that came with that. So there are different perspectives to consider when looking at human trafficking. In opposition to the attempts being made by social workers to be involved with human trafficking, those actually a part of the community of victims could argue that no one but other victims could possibly understand or help. And a lot of the information presented in is textbook material, so of numerical value. And studies performed only prove that no one really could understand and be able to fully help survivors due to the severity of situation of human trafficking, unless the helpers themselves become or were victims themselves. There's also a lot of dangers to consider and cause concern for the survivors and those investigating human trafficking, the social workers themselves, and those that are still enslaved and trying to escape. And then lastly, the intensity of being an activist could be expected on those that hold the perspective of wanting to end human trafficking, because it is a big deal, and you can't just say you want it to end, and it takes a lot of action to truly end it. They would have to dedicate their lives to actively striving to end and prevent human trafficking in the future. So, what is your role? There are some action steps that I have given below, and in order to make a difference, one must take action. So, firstly, make yourself aware and pursue a better understanding of what is actually involved. So educate yourself on the stakes, those affected, what's going on around you in your community, and just being knowledgeable of what human trafficking is. And secondly, do something with the information you learn. So volunteer at a local agency, for instance, Salvation Army Stop It program, which is in Chicago, Illinois. There's a list of other agencies and community things that I have given links to websites that give some of those below that you can visit. But lastly, pursue awareness for others and stay up to date on what's going on as a whole, not just what's going on in your given area, but in the world, in your entire country, and just knowing what the stance is with policies and such. But there's also another way you can advocate throughout your community, your country, just all over the place, is through the End It movement, which is usually spread on social media, which makes it more of a global community service in a way. For instance, there's a picture of what it actually looks like on my very first slide with the giant red X, and a lot of people just draw that on their hand and post it on social media just to bring awareness and bring light on the not bring light on the subject, but spur people's curiosity on what it is, and basically enforce the idea in their mind to consider researching it and making an impact in their community by volunteering at a local agency or something like that. So once again, if you want to learn more on different things you can get involved in, there's some links below on some websites you can visit. So in summary, social workers genuinely care for victims of human trafficking and making people aware of human trafficking. Their time, energy, research, and the list goes on for all the measures and methods these educated workers take to fully ensure that all the information there is credible. The work and research made in order for everyone to understand implies that they know what they're talking about. Social workers have successfully developed policies, movements, and organizations, all in pursuit of actively making a difference, risking their lives in many cases. It is to show the genuine concern and realization of the importance of gaining the data and sharing it. Also, the fact that victims are willing to risk their lives as a consequence of speaking out shows the need to be heard and understood. People want the knowledge out there of human trafficking firsthand. Although educating ourselves is very important, textbook material gives nothing compared to case studies and real life experiences. Therefore, it takes action along with knowledge to actively make a difference. Here are my references, and that is all I have. Thank you for listening.